In this baking video, I will be talking about how to cook the traditional Lithuanian cake Medutis, which is of course a honey cake. The main ingredients that are used are flour, baking powder, around a kilogram of sour cream, which is quite usual in most Lithuanian dishes, butter, which is not shown here, sugar, light sugar, and brown sugar, very important, a pinch of table salt, a lemon, or two depending on your taste, and of course 2 eggs, and the honey. Part 1 is the dough, and you have to take the butter and slice it into around 16 pieces so that it can melt and mix with the other ingredients much faster than it would if you just, chuck it in without doing anything. Make sure to get these cuts fairly even and similar so that they melt at the same time and you have to wait less overall to get the mixture right. After that has been completed, put the 200 grams of butter that you just cut up into the mixing bowl that we will be using for the duration of the dough, and then pour around 250 grams, or milliliters in this case, of honey into the same bowl. Afterwards, the same mixing bowl should be heated to a temperature around 30 degrees and mixed consistently until the honey and the butter has melted together. While you are waiting for the ingredients to melt, you can also mix some spices in order to make the cake taste more interesting. For this you will need 6 cloves and 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. This cake is very common in Lithuania during weddings for its sweet taste and not overly heavy aftertaste. After you have finished grinding up to a fine paste, you may then add the cinnamon. You will need around half a spoon of it. After that, lightly mix so that it is generally interseeded with the clove. The next step of this process requires 2 eggs and 2 teaspoons of sour cream. After you put everything into a bowl together, mix gently at first with a whisk in order to avoid splashes, and mix until it is a shade lighter than it originally was with the eggs. As the sour cream starts melting, you may stir faster and faster in order to speed up the process. Moving on, the next step requires that you measure out 100 grams of white sugar and 100 grams of brown sugar. These are essential in order to make the sweet tasting layers that are very common in the Lithuanian honey cake. Combining the acidity of the artificial sugar and the natural sugar that comes from honey gives the cake a quite long-lasting preservative that allows it to have a very long shelf life. After the mixing has been complete, pour it into the mixer where the butter and the honey has already successfully melted together, and then mix for around 5 to 10 minutes until the sugar has fully dissolved inside of the mixture. For the next part of the process, in my case, I have to exchange the lighter arm of the cooking machine for a heavy one and to prepare for the heavy dough that we'll be kneading. For this, you will need 700 grams of flour. I'm using the machine to measure this out, but maybe you will have to use another container and a traditional weight measurer. You also need 2 tablespoons of cooking powder, then pour out the spices that you mixed up earlier. If you didn't, that's also optional. And lastly, pour out the concoction of the eggs and sour cream that you mixed. And, just for good taste, add half a tablespoon's worth of salt. Remove the heating element from the mixer and then mix these ingredients until they form a thick dough. The time taken for this should be around 20 minutes, more or less. However, that can vary on how you want your dough to be. After the dough has finished, take a spoon or some sort of cooking utensil, and put it one at a time into some cling film, and wrap it up into a rectangular shape and put it in the fridge for around an hour for it to freeze properly so that it is ready to work with. Second part of this project is to make the layers, or in Lithuanian biskvitai. First, you'll have to preheat the oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Secondly, you're going to have to take that dough out of the fridge and flatten it with the roller pin. Then choose a form upon which you will base the entirety of your cake and cut around it in order to create the layers. For the next step, you'll need 2 baking trays and 2 baking papers on top of these trays. This is where you're going to be placing your first layers while you're waiting for the oven to preheat. Once the oven has reached its temperature, 180 degrees, we will then put the baking trays inside and wait for 9 to 10 minutes. After the layers have finished baking, you will put them on out on the counter or somewhere just to cool off for a few minutes. After they've cooled off, you'll take it off, place it somewhere else, and then prepare another baking paper for the next layer. Next up is third part, and arguably most important part, cooking Medutis. First, what you want to do is you want to zest a lemon or 2 based on your own preferences. Make sure to properly wash them before actually zesting them. Using a new lemon or an old or the same one that you just used to get the zest, squeeze out around 1 lemon's worth of lemon juice. Next, to continue that step, add in around 100 grams of white sugar. Then pour that white sugar into the same mixture. For the next bit, you will need to use all of that sour cream that was seen at the beginning of the video. For this, I recommend maybe using a bigger bowl than I did, as I changed it out later in the video. You may know this, but for making the actual paste that goes within the layers of the cake, it uses a lot of sour cream. This is because sour cream is very popular in Lithuania. It is usually what is eaten with most dishes. That includes soups, meats, bread, potato. It is very popular. To finish off the filling, all you have to do is add the lemon zest and then stir until it is fully integrated. Onto the final creation of the cake. First, you need to layer the top and bottom of each biscuit with tea. This tea can be, of course, optional up to taste, but what I use in this recipe and what I think is best is black tea. After the tea has been successfully spread along the layer, what you want to do then is take 2 to 3 spoonfuls of the paste that we just made and apply it directly to the first layer. You should of course even it out and then wait for the second layer, which of course you will have to repeat by applying tea to it again. Repeat this process until all but one of the cookie biscuits that you've made have been used up. for the last piece of cookie, I recommend maybe cooking it a bit more in the oven in order to get it more crispy and crunchy. And then what you want to do is break it up into tiny little bits and either grind it up with some sort of machine like I am using in this video, or manually with some maybe hammer or some other instrument. Cookie dust that you've acquired, spread it evenly along the top, and then using the palm of your hand, spread it alongside the side of the cake until you have no more left. Then stick it in the freezer and wait over one night. And this is the final product. Thank you for watching and goodbye.